Newlywed couple vanished from their redwood forest campsite during honeymoon in 2016. Wedding rings left on picnic table, but both Sarah and David were gone without any track. But 9 years later, in 2025, what a park maintenance worker found hanging 150 feet high in ancient redwood canopy changed everything investigators thought they knew about this case. Sarah Mitchell had dreamed of her honeymoon since she was a little girl, but instead of tropical beaches or European cities, she and her new husband David chose something completely different, a camping trip deep in the ancient redwood forests of Northern California. "I want our first adventure as husband and wife to be somewhere that makes us feel small," Sarah told David during their wedding planning, "somewhere that reminds us how big love can be." David Chen Mitchell, who'd taken Sarah's last name as a symbol of their fresh start together, couldn't have agreed more. Both nature photographers by profession, they'd fallen in love during a wildlife photography workshop 3 years earlier. Their wedding had been small and intimate, focused more on their commitment to each other than on elaborate celebrations. The redwood forest honeymoon was perfect for them. 7 days of camping among trees that had been standing for over 1,000 years, photographing the interplay of light and shadow in a cathedral of living wood that dwarfed human concerns. They arrived at Prairie Creek Redwood State Park on a sunny Monday morning in September 2016. Their campsite was tucked between enormous trees whose trunks were so wide that Sarah and David, holding hands, couldn't reach even halfway around them. "It's like camping inside a fairy tale," Sarah whispered as they set up their tent beneath a canopy so thick that only scattered beams of sunlight reached the forest floor. David was already unpacking his camera equipment, his professional eye cataloging the incredible photo opportunities surrounding them. "We're going to get shots here that will change our entire portfolio," he said, his excitement infectious. That first evening was magical. They cooked dinner on their camp stove while listening to the profound silence that only ancient forests can provide. Sarah wore her wedding dress, a simple, elegant gown she'd chosen specifically because it would photograph beautifully in natural settings. "I want to do a sunrise photo shoot tomorrow," she told David as they sat at their picnic table, sharing a bottle of wine they'd saved from their wedding reception. "Me in the dress, you in your good suit, with the morning light filtering through the trees." David loved the idea. "Our honeymoon portfolio," he agreed. "Something we can show our kids someday." They went to sleep that first night holding hands in their shared sleeping bag, surrounded by the gentle creaking of trees that had weathered centuries of storms. Tuesday morning dawned crisp and clear. Sarah woke at sunrise, excited about their planned photo session. She quietly slipped into her wedding dress while David slept, wanting to surprise him with the full effect when he opened his eyes. "Good morning, husband," she whispered, kissing his cheek. David's face lit up when he saw her. "You look even more beautiful than you did at our wedding," he said, reaching for his camera. They spent an hour photographing each other around their campsite. Sarah dancing between the massive tree trunks, her dress flowing like water. David climbing on fallen logs, his suit somehow making him look both formal and wildly romantic in the forest setting. "I want to explore deeper into the grove," Sarah said around 8 a.m. "The light is perfect right now, and I saw some incredible trees just off the main trail yesterday." David packed his professional camera bag while Sarah gathered her things. She decided to leave her wedding dress hanging from a tree branch near their campsite. It was delicate fabric, and she didn't want to risk damaging it on a hike. "We'll be back in an hour," she told David as she changed into hiking clothes. "Then we can do more photos this afternoon." They left their campsite at 8:30 a.m., walking hand in hand toward a grove of particularly ancient redwoods about half a mile from their tent. Other campers later reported seeing them on the trail, laughing and pointing their cameras at everything that caught their interest. But Sarah and David never returned to their campsite. When they failed to appear for lunch, other campers assumed they'd gotten caught up in their photography and lost track of time. When they still hadn't returned by evening, concern began to grow. Park rangers found their campsite exactly as they'd left it. The picnic table was set for lunch, with sandwiches still wrapped and waiting. Sarah's wedding dress hung pristinely from its tree branch, untouched by wind or weather. David's backup camera equipment sat neatly arranged in their tent. Most mysteriously, both of their wedding rings were placed carefully in the center of the picnic table, side by side, as if positioned there deliberately. But Sarah and David were nowhere to be found. The initial search was intensive. Rangers who knew every inch of the park led teams through the grove where the couple had been headed. Search dogs tracked their scent to a clearing about 3/4 of a mile from camp, then lost the trail completely. "It's like they just evaporated," lead ranger Michael Torres told investigators. "The dogs can follow them to this one spot, and then it's like they never existed." The clearing where the scent trail ended was unremarkable. A small open space surrounded by ancient redwoods, with no cliffs, no water features, no obvious hazards. Just massive trees and thick undergrowth that showed no signs of disturbance. Detective Lisa Rodriguez was assigned to lead the investigation. A 20-year veteran of missing persons cases, she'd worked dozens of disappearances in wilderness areas. But the Mitchell case immediately struck her as different. "Experienced hikers don't just vanish," she explained to the media. "And they especially don't remove their wedding rings and arrange them neatly on a table before disappearing. This suggests either foul play or something we don't understand yet." The investigation expanded rapidly. David's and Sarah's families hired private investigators. Fellow photographers organized volunteer search parties. Social media campaigns spread their photos across the country. But the more investigators dug, the stranger the case became. Security cameras at the park entrance confirmed that Sarah and David had never left in their car. Their vehicle remained in the parking area, keys inside, exactly where they'd left it Monday evening. Cell phone records showed no activity after Monday night. Both phones were found in their tent, powered off and undisturbed. Financial records showed no unusual activity. Credit cards hadn't been used. Bank accounts hadn't been accessed. It was as if both Sarah and David had simply stopped existing on Tuesday morning. The wedding ring discovery was particularly puzzling. Both rings were placed precisely in the center of the picnic table, aligned perfectly parallel to each other. No fingerprints were found on the table surface except Sarah's and David's from Monday evening. "Someone arranged those rings deliberately," Detective Rodriguez concluded. "But we can't determine if it was Sarah and David themselves or someone else." Friends and family insisted the couple would never remove their wedding rings voluntarily. Sarah's sister Emily was adamant. "Sarah hasn't taken that ring off since David proposed. She even wore it in the shower. There's no way she'd leave it behind willingly." Theories multiplied quickly. Maybe they'd been abducted by someone who forced them to remove their rings as a symbol. Maybe they'd encountered a dangerous animal and had to flee, somehow losing the rings in the process. Maybe they'd fallen into an underground cave system that hadn't been mapped. But every theory crumbled under scrutiny. There were no tire tracks indicating other vehicles had accessed the remote campsite. No evidence of animal attacks. No cave openings or geological features that could explain their disappearance. The search continued for 2 months. Hundreds of volunteers combed thousands of acres of redwood forest. Helicopters with thermal imaging flew grid patterns over the entire park. Technical cave rescue teams explored every known underground feature in the area. They found nothing. As winter approached and search efforts scaled down, the Mitchell case joined the long list of unsolved disappearances that haunt America's national parks. Sarah's wedding dress was eventually removed from the tree where she'd left it, preserved as evidence in a police storage facility. The picnic table where their rings had been found became an impromptu memorial site, with flowers and photos left by visitors who'd heard their story. David's brother, Mark, never stopped searching. He returned to the redwood forest every few months, hiking the same trails his brother and sister-in-law had walked, calling their names until his voice echoed through the ancient groves. "They're out there somewhere," Mark insisted to anyone who would listen. David was too smart and too careful to just get lost. Something happened to them, something specific, and we're going to figure out what. But as years passed without answers, even the most dedicated investigators began to accept that Sarah and David Mitchell had become another mystery in a forest full of secrets. The case file grew cold. Detective Rodriguez retired in 2019, the Mitchell disappearance still weighing on her conscience. The Park Service installed new safety protocols and communication systems, hoping to prevent future disappearances. Sarah's wedding dress remained in evidence storage, a haunting reminder of a love story that had ended in impossible circumstances. Then, 9 years later, park maintenance worker Carlos Mendoza made a discovery that changed everything. Carlos had been working in the redwood forest for 15 years. He knew every tree, every trail, every unusual feature in the park. His job involved trimming dangerous branches, clearing fallen debris, and maintaining the delicate balance between preserving the ancient ecosystem and keeping it safe for visitors. On a routine inspection in March 2025, Carlos was using a hydraulic lift to examine the upper canopy of a particularly massive redwood, a tree over 300 feet tall and estimated to be 1,200 years old. At 150 feet above ground, well above the normal range of his maintenance work, Carlos spotted something that made his heart stop. Hanging from a branch was a wedding dress, pristine white fabric flowing in the breeze, as perfect and untouched as if it had been hung there moments before. But Carlos knew immediately what he was looking at. Every park employee was familiar with the Mitchell case. They'd been briefed on the evidence, shown photos of the missing couple, trained to watch for any signs that might provide answers. This was Sarah Mitchell's wedding dress. But that was impossible. The dress had been removed from the campsite 9 years earlier and stored in police evidence. Carlos had personally helped pack it away. With shaking hands, Carlos photographed the dress from every angle before carefully retrieving it. The fabric was immaculate. No fading, no weather damage, no signs of having been exposed to years of forest conditions. Even more puzzling, the dress was hanging exactly as Sarah had left it at their campsite, carefully draped to avoid wrinkles, positioned with the artistic eye of someone who understood how fabric would catch light and shadow. Carlos immediately contacted park rangers who called Detective Rodriguez's replacement, Detective James Wilson. Within hours, the FBI was involved, and the Mitchell case was officially reopened. The dress was analyzed by forensic experts who confirmed it was identical to the one found at the original campsite. Same fabric, same size, same small tear in the hem that Sarah's sister had mentioned. But it was also somehow different. newer, as if it had been perfectly preserved while the original had aged normally in storage. Dr. Patricia Kim, a forensic textile expert, was baffled by her analysis. "This dress is simultaneously 9 years old and brand new," she reported. "The fabric composition matches the original exactly, but shows no signs of aging or exposure. It's as if time stopped for this particular object." But the dress wasn't the only impossible discovery. 3 weeks after Carlos found the wedding dress, park rangers conducting a thorough search of the upper canopy found David's camera bag hanging from a different tree, 175 feet above ground. The bag contained professional photography equipment worth thousands of dollars, all in perfect condition. But the memory cards inside held photos that should have been impossible. The images showed Sarah and David in the redwood forest, but not during their 2016 honeymoon. These photos depicted them at different ages, some showing them as teenagers, others as elderly couples. Some showed them in the same forest but with different vegetation, as if the images had been taken in different seasons or even different decades. Most disturbing were photos that appeared to show the forest from perspectives no human could achieve. Aerial shots taken from heights that would require helicopter access, ground-level images that seemed to be photographed from inside the massive tree trunks themselves. Dr. Michael Chen, a digital forensics expert, no relation to David, analyzed the metadata extensively. "These images were definitely taken with David's camera equipment," he confirmed. "But the timestamp suggests they were photographed over a span of 50 years, including dates before David was born and dates in the future." The investigation took on an almost supernatural quality. Physicists were consulted about temporal anomalies. Botanists studied the forest vegetation in the impossible photos. Even anthropologists examined the images for clues about how the redwood ecosystem might have changed over decades. But every scientific analysis only deepened the mystery. Dr. Sarah Foster, the quantum physicist who'd worked on other dimensional cases, was brought in to examine the evidence. Her conclusion was both hopeful and terrifying. "The redwood forest appears to be experiencing temporal disturbances," she explained to the investigation team. "These ancient trees have been standing for over 1,000 years, absorbing cosmic radiation, electromagnetic fields, and quantum fluctuations that we don't fully understand. It's possible they've become conduits for dimensional rifts." "Are you saying Sarah and David fell through time?" Detective Wilson asked. Dr. Foster's expression was grim. "I'm saying they may have fallen into time itself. The redwoods might exist in multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously, and Sarah and David could be trapped in a timeline that intersects with ours only occasionally." The theory seemed impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. The wedding dress and camera bag had appeared in locations that no human could reach without specialized equipment. The photos showed impossible perspectives and impossible timelines. The preservation of fabric and electronics defied every known law of decay and aging. Local Native American tribes were consulted about the redwood forest's spiritual significance. Elder Maria Santos of the Yurok people agreed to speak about the sacred nature of the ancient groves. "Our ancestors always knew these trees were doorways," she explained. "Not doorways between places, but doorways between times. The oldest trees remember everything, past, present, future. Sometimes people who love deeply enough become part of that memory." "Can they come back?" Detective Wilson asked. Elder Santos looked thoughtful. Love that's strong doesn't just disappear. If they're truly part of the tree memory now, they exist in all times simultaneously. Finding them isn't about searching in space, it's about searching in time. The investigation team faced an unprecedented challenge. How do you search for people who might be living in multiple timelines simultaneously? How do you rescue someone who's become part of a 1,000-year-old tree's memory? Dr. Foster worked with a team of theoretical physicists to develop a plan. If the redwoods are temporal conduits, she theorized, then there should be specific times when the dimensional barriers are weakest. Solstices, equinoxes, astronomical events that might synchronize the timelines. The team decided to establish a permanent monitoring station in the grove where Sarah and David had last been seen. Sensitive instruments were installed to detect electromagnetic anomalies, temporal fluctuations, and dimensional rifts. But the most important element of their plan was emotional connection. If love brought them into the tree memory, Dr. Foster explained, then love might be the key to bringing them back. Sarah's sister Emily and David's brother Mark began visiting the grove regularly, speaking to the trees as if Sarah and David could hear them. They brought photos from the wedding, read letters they'd written to the missing couple, and shared memories of their lives together. "We know you're here somewhere," Emily would say, standing beneath the massive redwood where the wedding dress had been found. "We know you can hear us. We're not giving up on you." For months, nothing happened. Then, on the winter solstice of 2025, the trees began to respond. At exactly sunset, the temperature in the grove dropped 20 degrees. Every electronic device within a quarter-mile radius began malfunctioning. And then, projected somehow onto the bark of the ancient redwoods, images began to appear. Sarah and David, looking exactly as they had in 2016, but also different. Older in some images, younger in others, as if they existed at every age simultaneously. They were standing in the same grove, but the forest around them shifted and changed, sometimes showing the redwoods as they appeared in 2016, sometimes as they might have looked centuries ago, sometimes as they could appear in distant futures. In one image, Sarah was wearing her wedding dress while standing next to trees that seemed to be made of light itself. In another, David was taking photographs of creatures that looked like deer, but seemed to be composed of living shadow. They appeared happy, peaceful, but definitely not entirely human anymore. The images lasted exactly 10 minutes, then faded as suddenly as they'd appeared. But they left behind a new discovery. Carved into the bark of the largest redwood, as if the tree itself had grown the letters, was a message. We are part of the forest memory now. We exist in all times, in all seasons of love. Don't mourn for us. We are more alive than ever, experiencing every moment of our love story simultaneously. Thank you for not forgetting us. Dr. Foster documented everything, but she knew the investigation had reached its natural conclusion. "They're not missing anymore," she told the families. "They've become something larger than individual people. They're part of the eternal story of this forest." Emily and Mark struggled to understand. Their loved ones were alive but unreachable, present but transformed beyond human limitations. "Are they happy?" Emily asked. Dr. Foster looked at the images they'd captured during the solstice event. In every photo, despite the impossible circumstances, Sarah and David were holding hands, smiling, clearly together. "I think they found something most people only dream of," she said. "A love story that transcends time itself." The grove where Sarah and David had vanished was designated as a protected research site. Scientists continue to study the temporal anomalies, hoping to understand how ancient trees might serve as bridges between dimensions. But the most important discovery wasn't scientific. It was emotional. Love letters began appearing throughout the redwood forest, carved into bark by trees themselves. Messages from Sarah and David to their families, but also messages from other couples who'd disappeared over the decades, all confirming that true love doesn't end with physical disappearance. "Tell Mom we dance in the moonlight every night," read one message that appeared on Emily's birthday. "Tell her we're planning the most beautiful wedding anniversary celebrations, one for every year we've existed in tree time." Park visitors reported strange phenomena: wedding music heard on quiet evenings, the scent of bridal flowers in the middle of winter, glimpses of couples in formal wear dancing between the massive tree trunks. The redwood forest had become a sanctuary for love that transcends physical limitations. Carlos Mendoza still works as a park maintenance specialist, but his job has evolved. He now serves as a liaison between the physical world and the temporal dimension that exists within the ancient trees. Families of missing people come to him for guidance on how to communicate with loved ones who've become part of the forest memory. "It's not death," Carlos explains to grieving families. "It's transformation. They're still there, still loving, still together. They've just become part of something eternal." On the 10-year anniversary of their disappearance, Sarah's wedding dress appeared one final time, hanging in the exact spot where she'd left it during their honeymoon. But this time, it wasn't alone. David's wedding suit hung beside it, both outfits perfectly preserved and somehow radiating warmth despite the cool forest air. Pinned to Sarah's dress was a note in handwriting that Emily recognized immediately. For couples who understand that love stories never really end. They just become part of the eternal forest. Thank you for showing us that some bonds are stronger than time itself. The message was signed with two names that made everyone's hearts skip: Sarah and David Mitchell, guardians of eternal love. The redwood forest continues to stand as it has for over 1,000 years, but it now serves an additional purpose. It's become a place where love stories that seem to end in tragedy are revealed to be transformation stories instead. Emily and Mark visit regularly, no longer searching for their missing loved ones, but celebrating the love story that's become part of the forest itself. They found peace in knowing that Sarah and David discovered something most people only dream of: a love so strong, it literally became eternal. And sometimes, when the light filters through the ancient canopy just right, visitors report seeing a bride and groom dancing between the trees, their laughter echoing through groves that remember every love story ever shared beneath their branches. The wedding rings that started this mystery were never found again. But occasionally, on anniversaries and special occasions, park visitors discover small circles of wildflowers growing in perfect rings around the bases of the ancient redwoods, nature's own wedding bands marking a love story that became part of the eternal memory of the forest itself. But the story of Sarah and David Mitchell was far from over. Their transformation into guardians of eternal love would soon reveal a purpose that extended far beyond their own romantic tragedy. 6 months after the 10-year anniversary manifestation, Couples from around the world began making pilgrimages to the redwood forest. Word had spread about the impossible love story, and people facing relationship crises started arriving at the park seeking guidance from the tree spirits. Dr. Foster documented these visits carefully, amazed by what she witnessed. Couples on the verge of divorce would enter the grove angry and bitter, only to emerge hours later holding hands and crying tears of reconciliation. "It's like the forest itself is counseling people," Dr. Foster reported. "Sarah and David's love story has become a catalyst for healing other relationships. The phenomenon grew stronger during astronomical events. During the spring equinox of 2027, park rangers documented over 50 couples experiencing what witnesses described as emotional revelations while visiting the grove. The forest seemed to respond to each couple's specific needs. Partners struggling with infertility would find messages of hope carved into bark. Couples dealing with long-distance relationships would hear whispered encouragements in the wind. But the most profound transformations happened to couples who'd lost children. Jennifer and Robert Hayes drove from Oregon after losing their 8-year-old daughter in a car accident. Their marriage was crumbling under grief and blame. Within minutes of entering the grove, they began hearing their daughter's laughter echoing through the trees. "Mommy, Daddy, don't be sad." A voice that sounded exactly like their daughter whispered through the rustling leaves. "I'm playing with the tree friends now. Love each other for me." Jennifer and Robert left the forest holding each other for the first time since the accident, their marriage healed by the impossible comfort their daughter had somehow provided through the ancient trees. Dr. Foster theorized that Sarah and David's intense emotional connection had somehow charged the entire forest with healing properties. Their love story created a resonance frequency, she explained. The trees are amplifying that frequency back to other couples. Families estranged by years of conflict began finding reconciliation beneath the ancient canopy. Adult children who hadn't spoken to their parents in decades would embrace tearfully after spending time in the grove. Dr. Chen continued analyzing the impossible photographs found in David's camera bag. As technology advanced, he discovered the photos weren't just showing different time periods. They were showing different possibilities, alternate timelines where love had triumphed over various challenges. "These images are like a guidebook," Dr. Chen realized. "Sarah and David are showing us potential futures, demonstrating how love can overcome any obstacle." One photograph showed an elderly couple celebrating their 75th wedding anniversary. Another depicted two women in wedding dresses exchanging vows beneath glowing trees. Each image contained subtle details that seemed to speak directly to visitors' specific situations. Perhaps the most remarkable development was the emergence of what locals began calling love echoes. Visitors reported hearing conversations between Sarah and David, sharing wisdom about maintaining strong relationships. "True love isn't about never fighting," Sarah's voice would counsel couples experiencing conflict. "It's about fighting for each other instead of against each other. Remember that you chose each other," David's voice would add. "In all the possible timelines, you found each other. That's not coincidence. That's destiny." Marriage proposal rates at the Redwood Grove increased by 400% over 3 years. The forest became known as the most romantic location on the West Coast, with couples traveling globally to propose beneath trees that had witnessed an eternal love story. Children visiting the grove began reporting conversations with the tree lady and tree man, who taught them about love and kindness. 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez drew pictures of her conversation with Sarah, depicting a woman in a flowing white dress explaining how trees remember every kind word. Dr. Foster interviewed dozens of children who claimed to have met Sarah and David. Their stories were remarkably consistent. The couple appeared as warm, glowing figures who taught valuable lessons about treating others with kindness. Children might be more receptive to their presence. Dr. Foster theorized. Adults get distracted by trying to understand the impossibility, while children simply accept the experience and learn from it. School districts began organizing field trips to the redwood grove as part of character education programs. Teachers reported that students who visited the forest demonstrated increased empathy and better relationship skills. Dr. Foster established the Mitchell Institute for Relationship Research, dedicated to studying how the grove's phenomena could strengthen marriages worldwide. Research revealed that exposure to the forest's energy activated neural pathways associated with empathy and emotional bonding. Sarah and David have become more than missing persons, Dr. Foster explained during an international conference. They've become a living symbol of love's ability to transcend physical limitations and heal emotional wounds. But perhaps the most profound impact was on the families who'd originally lost them. Emily and Mark no longer grieved for their missing loved ones. Instead, they felt honored to be connected to something that was helping so many people strengthen their family bonds. "We didn't lose Sarah and David," Emily explained to a documentary filmmaker. "We gained the knowledge that love really is eternal, and that some people are called to serve purposes bigger than individual lives." The Redwood Grove continues to stand as it has for over 1,000 years, but it now serves as proof that some love stories are too powerful to be contained by conventional endings. Sarah and David Mitchell disappeared as newlyweds on their honeymoon, but they returned as eternal guardians of love itself, using their transformed existence to heal relationships and strengthen the bonds between countless other couples. Their wedding rings were never found because they didn't need them anymore. They'd become part of something larger than any symbol could represent, living proof that true love really can transcend every limitation. And in the redwood forest of Northern California, where ancient trees remember everything, their love story continues to unfold, helping other couples write their own chapters in the eternal book of human connection. Today, 10 years after their disappearance, the grove where Sarah and David vanished has become a pilgrimage site for love itself. Rangers report that the trees in that specific area grow faster and stronger than anywhere else in the forest, as if nourished by the couple's eternal presence. Wedding photographers from around the world book sessions months in advance, hoping to capture some of the magical energy that surrounds the ancient redwoods. Couples who exchange vows beneath those towering trees report feeling an overwhelming sense of blessing, as if Sarah and David themselves are witnessing and celebrating each new beginning. The Park Service recently established the Eternal Love Trail, a walking path that connects all the locations where Sarah and David's presence has been most strongly felt. Along the trail, brass plaques share quotes from the couple's love echoes, offering guidance and inspiration to visitors. But perhaps the most beautiful tribute comes every Valentine's Day, when thousands of wildflowers bloom simultaneously throughout the grove, forming perfect heart shapes around the bases of the ancient trees. Local botanists have never been able to explain the phenomenon. The flowers appear regardless of weather conditions or seasonal patterns, as if the forest itself is celebrating love. Carlos Mendoza, the maintenance worker who first discovered Sarah's wedding dress, still works in the forest. He's become the unofficial keeper of their story, sharing their tale with visitors who seek to understand the mystery. They're not ghosts, he always tells people. They're love itself, living forever in the place that brought them the greatest joy. The wedding rings that started this mystery remain lost to normal reality, but they've been replaced by something far more precious. Proof that true love really can transcend death, time, and every limitation we thought defined human existence.